Please rise when the graduates will enter the room and give them a hand. Please be seated. On behalf of the board of the John Stuart Mill College, I all bid you a warm welcome to this festive event of the graduation of the 2022 cohort of students, the COVID cohort. I have one announcement to make. They're going to be making, the pictures will be taken from this ceremony. If you feel that you don't want to be on one of those pictures, we invite you to be seated in the left corner in the back there. There, the photographer won't take pictures of people who are seated there. So please take the opportunity if you feel you need it. The official opening speech will be given by my dear colleague, Professor Lieven de Kok, who is the Dean of the John Stuart Mill College. I might also say a little bit about who I am. My name is René van Woudenberg. I'm the chairperson of the examination board of the PPE program. So I've seen many names and very few faces of the PPE students, but still I'm at a distance, I'm involved in this. I'm a professor of epistemology and metaphysics in the philosophy department. And my colleague, Lieven de Kok, will now address all of us.
Hello, dear students of the PPE program, dear family and friends, and dear colleagues in the program. I want to welcome you to the graduation ceremony, and I want to congratulate you on a major achievement in your life. 3 years ago, you arrived in Amsterdam at our university. I was just a new dean. I remember inviting you on the introduction days, and I remember very well what I said. I had been to the Venice Biennale, and I used the slogan, may you live in interesting times. At that time, I didn't know that this is called the Chinese curse. It is apocryphal, it's not Chinese, but if you live in interesting times, well, these are not always the easiest of times. So what you've been through as a cohort is quite exceptional. We've had a pandemic, a collapse of civil liberties in lockdowns. We had a collapse of the economic system, and we ended with a war in Europe. So that's quite something to experience when you're a student, especially in a PPE program. You'll remember your student days ever as a kind of very particular period. Then there's no cohort of PPE students that has been struck by the events of the corona pandemic as yours. So we started well in the first year, but in the middle of March, suddenly exams were cancelled and all teaching went online. This was a major disruption of normal education. Lecturers had to teach online. which meant that I had to reinvent the teaching methods. Well, it took some time before we realized that we managed to do that in a fluent way, but after some time we managed. And then after some time, it became a bit tedious, all the online education, watching people on the screen. But then again, I think the way we managed to work ourselves through the whole period as students, staff, in particular the junior lecturers who've been in all these online seminars with you, I really want to congratulate people on the way we managed to work ourselves through this period. And if you look at the result, you see that it's absolutely, it went extremely well. You see in the assessment of the exams, there's no loss of quality whatsoever in the way you have been tested, the way you have gone through the program. I've been in the thesis committee, I've read the thesis at the end of the program, and as is always the case, well, we're very proud of our students, but if you read the thesis, you're even prouder. The quality of the thesis is this year exceptional as it is in other years. So very many congratulations on that. We hope you love the program and are well prepared for the futures. So your memories of the program are interesting. We see that junior lectures and seminars were very well liked. Many people have vivid memories of exchanges. You've liked discussions with fellow students. I can really understand why. I always tell the new students that the best thing you have in the college is your fellow students. You're in a very international environment with highly motivated and very interesting people from many parts in the world. I think you'll remember that this kind of, well, we had a discussion with our commencement speaker who said, what's the most interesting thing? This kind of international environment you work in, you live in, that will really shape your thoughts and ideas and the way you deal with people in the future. And all these things you're going to miss. You're moving in different directions, studying various masters in various countries, the Netherlands, but Austria, Spain, UK, Belgium, wherever you end up. Some of you take a year off, do an internship, set up a business. We are happy to see people going in various directions after finishing our program, and we hope you have acquired the skills you will need in the rest of your life. And I can only end with expressing the hope that you'll stay connected to the college in future, and congratulate you on the achievement today. Thanks.
There can't be a graduation ceremony without a commencement speaker. This year's commencement speaker is Marieke Koekoek. She is a member of parliament, and she is a member of the political party Volt. Her responsibilities include foreign trade and development cooperation, justice, agriculture, nature and food quality, social employment, social affairs and employment, kingdom relations and public health, welfare and sports. So it is a bit of a miracle that she can be present here this afternoon. The floor is yours, Marieke. Be welcome.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and I wasn't half as busy as you probably have been these last few years, so I'm not complaining. And well, let me start by congratulating you all, obviously. You did it, you have made it, and this is not a small thing, especially considering you have spent most of your college years during a global pandemic. And don't worry, I won't talk too much about COVID, but know that my admiration for you is great for struggling through these years and graduating in such fine terms as I just heard. You've made it here, and your friends and family are sitting here beside you, proud of how far you've come, as they should be, and proud of the person that you have become. But today is not only about how far you've come, about the past. Commencement means the beginning of something. And some of you are now pursuing a master's degree, some are doing traineeships, have found a job, others a gap year to discover more about the world and about yourself. But whatever choice you've made, you will be confronted with the reality outside the safe walls of this very fine institution. And you will be tested on your ideas, your values, and your steadfastness in defending what is important to you. Your degree, philosophy, politics, and economics, gives you a unique advantage to this challenge. Your career path was not set out for you when you started these studies, and it might have become a burden. I'm sure that you have been confronted with the question, that existential question, what do I want to do with my life? Either you asked it yourself, maybe your parents did, or a nice uncle or aunt asked you this question on the birthday party. And let me give you some advice today. Instead of treating that question as a burden, which it can be, one that maybe fills you with anxiety and doubt, you should take it as an advantage, an opportunity, a strike of luck. Your degree has given you something that others have not, an opportunity to discover not only who you are, but to think about how the world could be. You are not only idealist, and I think the society needs a lot, many more idealists nowadays, but you are actually equipped to implement change, to come up with real ideas that could change society for the better. And you will need these skills, because unfortunately, you are part of a generation that is graduating in a time when the world faces the most profound challenges. Interesting times, as was said. The war raging in Ukraine, climate change, rising economic inequality across the globe, and a growing number of attacks on values that we have established together a long time ago. Think of shootings in Sarajevo or Oslo in LGBTQI bars, the murder of Mahsa Amini in Iran, the prosecution of critical journalists and NGOs in Turkey or Belarus, or the rise of disinformation campaigns and extreme right rulers in the EU. And these are symptoms of divisions and dysfunctions that plague our political society and our system. And that is why the world needs people like you, those who combine idealism with pragmatism. People that see problems, have a vision on how to solve them based on values, but at the same time are able to come up with practical solutions to make a real change. And now is the time to go out there, to go to the world, based on your ideals and values. And that is why before, when I told you that the question, what do I want to do with my life, or other questions like what should my career path be, or where am I going, should not be dreaded, but should be taken as a tremendous opportunity. This is your time. Time and time again, we see that it's the young people that go out and create new and better standards for our society, that change what is normal. And there are 1,000 ways to shape the world around you. Whether you start working for an NGO, go into politics, be a researcher, be a volunteer, work as a consultant, work at the UN or the EU. While you're working, you will find out that there are still a bunch of jobs that you haven't even thought of yet. And all of you have already had a taste of that challenge that face you outside of these university walls. Whether it was by doing an internship or an exchange abroad, and all of you know that the challenges society faces cannot be handled alone. They need international solutions. But to be able to work together in a society that is divided and polarized means first we need to re-establish trust. We need to understand our cultural differences and respect them. Treat each other as equals, and only then we can truly start a much-needed dialogue about our future. And since I'm standing here today for a group that, among other things, has also studied philosophy, I hope you will forgive me if I bring some philosophical theory into this speech. But the ideas I present here today are not new. It was Jürgen Habermas who stated in his ideal of deliberative democracy that the democratic procedure always includes that participation that is based on equality and symmetry. Loosely translated, that means that everybody should be in the discussion, and they should be treated as equals, perceived as equals, and all have the same chance to initiate speech act, to question, interrogate, and to debate in an openly fashion. But it's precisely this that we seem to be lacking in our society and our political system nowadays. More and more we see in our societies racism, homophobia, as well as ethnic, class, political and religious hatred. And we see fear of asylum seekers, migrants, leading to a failing system. We saw Chinese people being harassed in the streets because of disinformation about the COVID pandemic, and we see African leaders in international organizations not being taken seriously time and time again. And we see how our democratic system fails to protect the most vulnerable in our societies. And in all these situations, what is lacking is a sense of intercultural understanding and an open dialogue that helps people to come together. Often you see people stuck in their own ways and ideas without being willing to listen to the interpretation of others or to the same values and ideas that they share. This fosters hate and adversity. And by treating someone as an adversity, they are bound to become one. And through your exchanges, through your internships, and even in your studies, and in the future work you'll be doing, you had the luck to be surrounded by international students and to have lived in societies different from where you grew up and to know and understand a different culture. And you had the luck to be really international citizens, making you better equipped than most to find solutions to the problems and to this core problem that I talked about that the world is facing today. Open-mindedness and understanding are qualities that make you well suited for a career in any international environment, but also in a national environment. Because you will see that anywhere you go, you will meet people that have different values, that might have walked a different life path than yours. And when you look for equal dialogue, you will make progress. And democracy, it only works, that's very important to remember, it only works when we remember it is all about people and not just you and I. This was really better addressed than what I can do in Obama's commencement speech in 2020. He spoke about democracy and he said, it's not always pretty, this democracy of ours. Trust me, I know. It can be loud and messy and sometimes depressing. And I think he was right. But for all its flaws, democracy is the best that we have. And therefore we have to seek ways how we can address the democratic deficit and make democracy work for its people again. And for that, I have hope for our future because it's people like you that will be shaping democracy and fighting for it. And to end my address, it's almost obligatory that I leave you with some advice. First, instead of an us versus them mentality, think about people as we and listen to each other. Because too often we look at what divides us and forget about what unites us. And the way to do that is to question, to keep asking questions, not the type of questions that you might be sometimes asking to which you already know the answer to look smart, but to really an open question. How is it going? Why do you think that? Why do you believe that? And also allow yourself to be questioned. Not the person that you are, but your beliefs and your values. And through questions, we really connect with each other. So that's the first advice I will leave you with. The second advice, challenge your own ideas, but trust your values. Because too often we are a product of our surroundings, our situation, and the day-to-day roller coaster of our lives, maneuvering through everything that is thrown to us. And it is important in those moments, when you feel that society is coming down at you, to stop and think for a moment, what is most important to me? I like to take some inspiration from Rawls' idea of the veil of ignorance. It is important to test whether your ideas and values hold up, regardless of your position in society. In other words, put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand where their ideas are coming from. It will help you come closer together in dialogue and forge trust. And it doesn't mean that you should give up your values. Too often we doubt ourselves, compromise our values because reality gets in the way, or we think we can progress in life if we compromise. Stop and think what you find really important and stand for that. And then finally, trust in your own ability to make change happen. It's easy to underestimate yourself, but I've seen on many occasions how small initiatives or individuals can make a difference in society, whether it is through voting, citizens' initiatives, or activism. Our world is often ruled by extrovert societies of people who are not afraid to make their views known. And the result is far too often that those who have a critical mind and who are many times in their own worst critic don't stand up. And my biggest advice is this: speak up, because your voice matters. For societal change, societal discourse, and narratives that make up our truths, you need to speak up, because that's only then what we think is normal will change. Norms will change, so do not be afraid to speak up. And do not think that your voice does not matter. Because you are the one that can create a world that lasts forever, where generations before you have failed to do just just have failed to do just that. So thank you all for your attention. And once again, a very well-earned and big congratulations to you all.
So thank you very much, Marieke, for this wonderful speech. The next item on the program is the actual handing over of the diplomas to you. And the way we're going to proceed is as follows. I'll call the name of a bunch of supervisors, starting out with Phil Robichaud, and then the students that were supervised by him are invited to take a chair in front of the audience, and then Phil will give a 1 minute laudatio on each person, and at the same time something about you will be on the wall, and I invite the students who are being for whom the laudatio is going to be given to stand up here, and then I'll hand over the diploma. It's all been signed, so that can be a smooth and a quick thing, because that's a good thing, because we are with so many. So I now like to invite Phil Robichaud and the 4 students that he supervised in their thesis.
So I'll just start by saying 1 minute is tough. We'll all do our best. And my laudatios, I always work with a rubric, so you'll see the rubric as it goes through. The first, do I have to click something? Oh, yeah, there we go. Ivona. Okay. So there's a certain kind of thesis student that experienced supervisors know well. It's the kind of student who starts the process knowing what they want to conclude, but doesn't yet know how to get to the conclusion. Now you can imagine that this approach is like problematically going backwards, but that wasn't the case with Ivona. She was a special virtuous instance of this because of how systematically she worked at canvassing different argumentative avenues to her favorite conclusion, which was that the EU has a responsibility to reduce the amount of flying. I recall one meeting about halfway through where she developed, I think, 7 or 8 distinct ways of making her argument, and we had this fun/painful discussion of trying to figure out, okay, what makes the cut and what doesn't. Subsequent development of Ivona's thinking on the matter was really remarkable for the fact that she provided a super subtle and thorough grounding of her viewpoints, that no one reading it would know or have any clue about this starting point that she had. Moreover, Ivona never lost touch with what would be feasible in her discussions, which demonstrates to me that she means business. Ivona owes this accomplishment to her intense commitment and, I think, reliable sense of both what's feasible and morally defensible. So that's the first part. And the second part is always a lesson that I learned from my students. So here's the lesson I learned from you. There are alternatives to flying somewhere in Europe for vacation, so look for them, lesson 1. But lesson 2, embrace the context of discovery. If you're serious and not acting in bad faith, it's fine to trust your hunches and see where the arguments take you. I wish you all the best, Ivona. Okay. Amalia. There's a certain kind of thesis student that experienced supervisors know well. It's the kind of student who barely needs you. The reason they barely need you isn't because they're egotistical or arrogant. Rather, it's because they're driven, unintimidated, creative, curious, and they have sharp research instincts. Amalia certainly has this constellation of traits, and this made the experience of working with her sort of like giving an artist just colors, and then you see that they create this nice painting. Amalia's thesis took existing discussions about what our individual obligations are with respect to informing ourselves about the harms of climate change, and she extended them to this collective context. With admirable precision, she demonstrated not only that firms, organizations, and other groups have responsibilities to know how to limit their contributions to climate harms, but she developed powerful and original arguments for what grounds these obligations. If we're to believe Amalia, and we really should, firms and organizations not only have an obligation to inquire into relevant facts of the matter, but also have obligations to communicate with what they find with each other. These powerful and original arguments could very well be the basis of something publishable, and it's a real accomplishment to be doing that kind of work at the bachelor's level. I expect that the personal qualities that made this thesis possible will serve you extremely well in the future. Okay, lesson. It's possible to be both extremely engaged and extremely calm. Amalia's demeanor throughout this somewhat intense thesis trajectory that we have was a sight to behold. Always calm and measured, but always super engaged. Thanks for demonstrating this possibility, and I wish you all the best in the next slide. Cool. Thank you. So there's a certain kind of thesis student that experienced supervisors know really well. It's the kind of student who's intensely self-aware and knows when to follow their supervisor's lead and when to follow their own instincts. Kuhn's project, undertaking an ethical analysis of migration that's the result of climate change, is extremely important, and it hasn't received as much attention as it deserves. Early on in the process, Kuhn was interested in the admittedly interesting conceptual question of what a climate migrant was. But I suggested that with his PPE training behind him, that he was up to far more than just this semantic discussion. And Kevin responded to these nudges of mine in a really constructive way and delivered a thought-provoking and really powerful defense of what reparative justice requires of countries who have contributed the most to the circumstances that will result in mass international climate migration. Kuhn's open-minded yet focused approach to his research was really cool to witness, and I hope that you draw from this in future work of yours. So a lesson: don't fear broad research questions. The bigger questions often match up with more important questions, and with some grit and ingenuity, you can really make some headway on them. Congratulations, Kuhn. Kevin? Okay, yeah, you know, right? So there's a certain kind of student. This one, it's the kind of student that pushes you out of your comfort zone in a way that's exhilarating rather than worrying as a supervisor. In Kevin's case, he was interested in the implications that finding oneself in echo chambers, which are environments where beliefs about important topics such as the reality of climate change are rarely subjected to challenge or critique. So he's interested in these echo chambers and the effect that has on how blameworthy one is for having false beliefs about the relevant topic. Kevin's approach to this question drew on discussions in epistemology that I was less familiar with than other issues, but witnessing Kevin's passion for the topic and his careful and systematic exploration of the debates was really a learning experience for myself and I think the whole group. And the results of the thesis speak for themselves. I suspect that the combination of Kevin's interested in everything attitude, together with the high standards that he has, that will be an asset in whatever you do going forward. And the lesson I learned from Kevin: don't fear the unknown. Genuine curiosity and a critical mind reveal new research pathways that would be obscured by timidity. Thanks, Kevin, for challenging me and allowing me to challenge you along the way. I wish you the best in your future endeavors.
So now there is this important Tessel moment. So this is a tradition that you move from the right-hand side, this, how do you call it? From the right to the left. So please take your place back. So this allows me, this short moment allows me to say something about what every student is going to take away from the Free University, which is this collecting box. It's an icon of the Free University because the Free University was a crowd-funded university in the 1880s. So there were people of small means, and they collected cents or 5-cent pieces, and then someone would collect or empty the boxes. And actually, the Free University was built up from, it started with 12 students in 1880, and now we are over 30,000. And it's due to the diligence of many people of small means who paid for this. So we owe them a lot, I should think. Next on are the students of Aylin Kassir.
I wish I was Phil's student because he made such long and beautiful laudations. Mine are very shorter. I'm so sorry from the beginning, but I want to tell you that I will miss you, all four of you, very much, and I liked all our discussions. And yes, so let's start. Yes, yes. So I'm so happy to be able to know you. I will miss our discussions on autocratization and norm diffusion. You did a great job in your thesis where you successfully analyzed why growth in bilateral trade relations promotes autocratization in importing countries. And I wish you all the best in your career and in your personal life. Good luck and keep up the good work. Your diploma. Lucas. So, you did a very great job with your thesis where you try to explore determinants of different types of populism in Italy. But the most memorable part for me was actually your dedication to know the Italian case more. You even went to Italy, you took Italian lessons, and although you weren't able to attend to some of our meetings, at the end you did an amazing job and you wrote a great thesis. So I wish you all the best and in your personal life, in your academic career, and I'm so happy to know you, and good luck. So you did a very great job with your thesis where you analyzed the conditions under which membership in regional organizations is contributing to the survival of autocratic systems. And I liked it very much. And I really congratulate you for that beautiful thesis and wish you all the best in your academic career, in your personal life. And I'm really so happy to know you. And good luck. Finally, Nina. With dedication and hard work, you also did a very good job. And it was so nice to see you actually trying to answer the same research question with Max, but by using a different method and different approach. And I really liked your cooperation and coordination during all those meetings. And I hope one day, both of you, you will be able to publish that as a co-authored article so I would like to read it in the future, in the short-term future. Please work on it, okay? I'm so happy to know all of you and good luck with academic life, with your personal life, and congratulations.
So now again, there's this turning of the tassel moment. Yeah. That is a messy moment in the ceremony. Next on is my colleague Lisa Bastiaan and the student that she supervised.
You're next. You're next. You're not up yet. Yeah. That is not Martine. It's good to see you. So Martine was part of the remote supervision group, hence only one person being here. So this is the first time we actually see each other in person. It's lovely. Yeah, the title of Martine's thesis in no way hides her ambition. You have it up there. For an ontological pluralism in the Anthropocene, renewing the human-non-human relation. Quite a mouthful. So instead of making her life easy and choosing a topic from within the well-trodden paths of PPE, Martine took on the challenge of criticizing and revising the very way in which we think of ourselves and the world around us. She did not shy away from tackling complex concepts such as the Anthropocene, ecocentrism, and planetary thinking, which often lack clear definitions. In her thesis, she impressively weaved her way through a jungle of different literatures, traditions, and disciplines, until she presents us with a wide-ranging conclusion and a proposal for how to, and I quote, renew the human-non-human relationship in a way that is adequate to the crisis of the Anthropocene. Working with Martine has been very instructive and fruitful. I was very impressed with her courage to take on the big questions and by her refusal to be limited, in part by me, to the methods and traditions of only one discipline. Throughout our many discussions, in which I inevitably tried to convince her to bite off smaller chunks, she would bite off bigger chunks. She stayed true to herself, her idea, and it was fascinating to see her line of argument emerge and grow stronger. Congratulations.
Yeah, there's also for you the messy moments. Next on is Justin Bernstein and their students.
Okay. Oh, I'm starting with Svenja. Okay. Svenja's thesis begins by considering the oft-expressed worry that the EU's decision-making processes are insufficiently democratic, and therefore the EU lacks legitimacy. Svenja replies that this concern is misguided for two reasons. First, we should assess the legitimacy of the EU in terms of the epistemic virtues and vices of its policymaking processes rather than its democratic virtues and vices. And second, we should doubt that the EU would be epistemically better off if it were more democratic. Svenja provides a convincing defense of these ambitious and provocative claims by creatively integrating several distinct literatures that have never been brought together before. Literatures in political philosophy, legal philosophy, and political science. Ultimately, Svenja wrote the most impressive undergraduate thesis I have ever read. Moreover, Svenja was an exemplary advisee. She read voraciously, but never lost track of her own ideas or voice. In response to feedback, Svenja stood up for her work when objections or constructive criticisms could be rebutted, but she also repeatedly revised or abandoned passages that weren't working as well as they could have been. Svenja, keep doing what you're doing. I look forward to reading your work in print. Sebastian. So Sebastian initially wanted to write his thesis about drug prohibition laws, but he quickly recognized that most of the things he wanted to say had already been said. After a couple weeks of very loudly despairing, Sebastian realized that some of his ideas could be applied to a relatively recent public health challenge, the overconsumption of social media. In the end, Sebastian produced an impressively original, philosophical, nuanced, and plausible thesis. In it, he explores policy measures that could do better or worse at preserving social media's function as a forum for individual expression and political speech, while also protecting individuals and populations from the horrors of overconsumption and addiction. During our meetings, I enjoyed Sebastian's down-to-earth demeanor and sense of humor. These traits have been immortalized in the acknowledgement section of his thesis, where at one point Sebastian considers thanking God, but opts instead to thank myself, without whom this thesis would never have been written. Thank you indeed, Sebastian. Fleur's thesis starts with some familiar problems that plague liberal representative democracies. Namely, voters are uninformed and partisan, elections systematically fail to hold legislators accountable for their decisions, and these factors often incentivize political representatives to serve powerful private interests rather than constituents. In light of these problems, Fleur considers the strengths and weaknesses of two methods of selecting political representatives: elections and selecting them at random, what is come to be known as lotocracy. Fleur plausibly proposes that using both methods to establish distinct legislative bodies will get various benefits of each method of selection while avoiding many of their problems. In so doing, Fleur advances an exciting conversation that's happening right now that thinks about why we care about elections or how much we should. Fleur exhibited an easygoing and level-headed demeanor during our meetings. She grounded our thesis tutorial group with her engaged but relaxed presence. Additionally, I respected her commitment to a healthy work-life balance, which is all too rare at this time of year. Fleur, I'm confident these strengths will continue to serve you well. Eveline's thesis focuses on how policymakers should attempt to help prevent people with substance abuse issues from relapsing. Eveline impressed me by the sheer range of literature she consumed in the course of producing her thesis. This literature included debates about paternalism and John Stuart Mill's harm principle, different views in the philosophy of action and psychology about the nature of addiction, and public policy debates about effective responses to substance abuse disorders. Throughout her thesis, Eveline explores an interesting theme. Policymakers should pay attention to how one's physical environment can contribute to relapses into substance abuse. Eveline took on this project with courage and determination. I appreciated her perceptive contributions to our thesis tutorials, her thoughtfulness, and her willingness to read so widely. I also appreciated it when, along with returning a book I lent her, she brought me a bottle of wine on behalf of the thesis group, along with a note that recommended that I drink the wine while assessing the group's theses. Thank you, Eveline.
All right, let's have this messy moment again. Next on are the students and the person of Wijnand Kastert.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. As my wonderful students know, I do not belong in this century, nor do I belong in the previous one. So rather than reading my laudations from my phone, I'm just going to read it from this piece of paper here. Okay. First up, Julia. The text of the laudation that I'm about to deliver was set in stone several weeks before Julia submitted her thesis, and she knows it. Because at the end of that epic 7-hour-long Zoom session in May, Julia and I both noted that that meeting was one for the books. So why the long meeting? After all, Julia combines a clear, creative, and critical mind with an impressive work ethic. What could possibly go wrong? Well, how about relying on that Mac computer? You know, the one with the unusual file path conventions? Yet in the end, we were able to figure out a workaround to make sure the code in your script files would run smoothly. In fact, Julia's diligence and intellect yielded the completion of a terrific thesis which investigates whether and how trade links with the US and China shape Latin America's foreign policy objectives. Now, I've been in this business for several years now, and your undergraduate thesis is the best research project that I have ever supervised. Julia. Julia, congratulations. Congratulations, well done. Well, I guess I might as well say something about Eugene's computer as well. In all seriousness, on numerous occasions, your kind offer to allow us to use your computer's microphone for the Zoom tutorials saved the day. The same applies to the delicious blueberry Pocky sticks that you brought along to one of the tutorials to celebrate your birthday. I also fondly remember our conversations about animation and your own works of art, which you always sign with Akira. Your thesis merits this signature as well, because you did a superb job of validating your descriptive claims about the complex transnational links between the US and Latin America by estimating several latent class analysis models, which, just like blueberry Pocky sticks, is heavily underrated in the discipline. Collecting your own data, by the way, is not, which is what you did as well, which is impressive. All things considered, I am not surprised that you are currently pursuing a graduate degree in political economy at the University of Amsterdam. Eugene, congratulations. If I had to guess, Linda pretty much knows what I'm about to say. That's because Linda is always several steps ahead. Consider, for instance, the detailed description of her preferred research topic that she submitted before the tutorials even started. Or Linda's slick presentation at the department's annual conference in which she showcased an impressive range of tables and figures from her research, all based on independent coding. Staying ahead of schedule throughout the entire thesis trajectory also allowed her to assist the other students in our group with finding and combining appropriate data sets. Indeed, well before Linda submitted her outstanding thesis, which examines whether and how international exposure to Chinese linkage and leverage shapes democratization outcomes in Southeast Asia, she received an offer of admission from the graduate program in economics at Erasmus University Rotterdam. Linda's timely interventions during seminars were also remarkably effective. Her concise, incisive comments and questions often put the discussion on its head, or reminded me that it was time for a break. In a word, she's a true professional. Linda, congratulations.
The turning of the test. Now I'd like to invite to come to the front the students of Liberty Chi.
I'm not Liberty Chi, but I'll be reading some words about the students. So regrettably, we were unable to actually get some laudatios from Liberty, but as thesis coordinator, I have access to all the assessment forums, and so I was able to read all the glowing stuff that was written about you in those assessment forums, and I'll summarize some of that for each of you. Yeah. Thumbs up. Famke.
Yeah.
The thesis does a good job at explaining why it's important to recognize the role that toxic masculinity plays in legitimizing the far right's climate change denialism. The thesis combines insights from politics and philosophy in incredibly convincing fashion. It's an ambitious and fine thesis which offers interesting perspectives, and it's clearly the product of hard work and serious thought. Well done. Congratulations, Famke. Maria made a very clear contribution to a specific and wide-ranging set of literatures. The argumentation in the thesis was very strong, synthesizing disparate data in an easy-to-understand and convincing narrative. This is an excellent thesis that far exceeds the standards I would expect to see at an undergraduate level. Great job. Yeah. Cecilia, this is a superb thesis that is well above the standard that one would expect for an undergraduate degree. The argumentation is incredibly strong, easy to follow, and convincing. The thesis does a great job at carving out a very precise and valid gap in existing literature that it seeks to fill. It makes a considerable contribution, and with some adjustments, could even provide the basis for publication. Congratulations, Cecilia. Finally, Camilla. Considerable effort was taken in this thesis to demonstrate the wide-ranging implications of its findings. The societal implications were addressed extremely capably. This is an excellent thesis of which the author can be proud. She tackles a complex subject matter and makes an obvious and significant contribution to knowledge. Great job. All right.
Thank you, Phil, for being a stand-in. And this is the moment. Right. Lieven de Kok and his students.
So dear Stijn, welcome back. It's a year since the thesis was finished. You did not finish this year because you were one of the victims of the corona crisis, not being able to have an exchange, and you opted to do that this year. But I still remember very vividly the discussions we had. It was just after one of the very first corona waves where we could get back and had very highly stimulating discussions in our group. You took a very interesting topic and highly important. You started with how can I have investment policies for climate change, and you ended up with the possibility of leapfrogging towards renewables in Africa. If that's possible, that would be a major solution for a lot of the climate problems. You took the most recent literature, had a kind of very clear analysis connected to the social development goals and got a very nicely, very well argued, balanced thesis on, as I said, an extremely important topic. Very well done. And congratulations with finishing the degree after your stay in Prague.
The students and the person of Shaklar Dede.
Do I click on something? Giorgio Maria Capuzzello.
That's me.
AKA Joe. Throughout the thesis trajectory, Joe had a lot more on his plate than his peers, since he had a couple of other remaining courses to pass. But despite his hectic schedule, he would always be a very energetic, proactive, attentive, and smiling participant in our thesis group meetings. As his thesis project, Gio passionately wanted to critically analyze the in and outs of the so-called Chinese debt trap in Africa, which is a politically charged topic and a subject of ever-increasing media attention. Though I was initially hesitant, it proved to be a very fruitful and exciting research topic, leaving aside the academically rather uninteresting evil China, good China commentaries. Gio has successfully written an impressive thesis on the conditions under which foreign aid can and cannot contribute to human flourishing in Africa. I am delighted to hear that Gio will pursue a master's in international studies at the prestigious London School of Economics, which is a great next step and a perfect fit for Gio's research and career passions. Congratulations, Gio. Oh, another John Stuart now. Inspired by the book we have read on the philosophy and the sciences of well-being, Sophie wondered how to make sense of the fact that different scientific studies reach conflicting results on how higher education contributes to people's well-being. This problem is aptly labeled in her thesis as the so-called happiness education paradox. This ambitious research topic has led Sophie to acquire a thorough understanding of the foundational and methodological issues in conceptualizing and measuring well-being. Though it was a challenging project, Sophie successfully produced a very well-informed and interesting conceptual analysis and a well-thought philosophical take on the subject. Throughout the thesis trajectory, Sophie struck me as a careful reader, a good listener, a constructive, curious, and hardworking, mature student, and perhaps most remarkably, a deeply reflective person. It has been a true pleasure supervising Sophie's thesis and holding a reading group with her. Armed with her patience and thoughtful attitude, I'm confident that Sophie will pave her own way for a bright academic and non-academic future. And I'm glad to hear that you are now pursuing a master's in behavioral economics at UFA. Great.
One, two, three. Finally, John Hogan and the students that he supervised.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see this group again. They're the reason why I think supervising PPE theses was the favourite part of my job last year. You were an absolute delight to supervise, all of you. You made... I look forward to all of our conversations every time, and it's lovely to see you all here again. What button do I press? Ah. Elsa, you wrote a very impressive thesis that focused on an issue, the return of cultural artefacts that were stolen under colonialism, that's received insufficient attention from scholars of international relations, and you proposed a really innovative way of addressing some of the key questions that this topic raises. For both Elsa and myself, one of those questions is not, should the artefacts that were stolen be returned, as there seems to be only one ethically sound answer to that question. Instead, you tackle questions such as, to whom should they be returned? The peoples from whom they were taken, or the states that were established around them under colonial rule? And who should make those decisions? For answers, Elsa drew inspiration from the African Union security architecture, and you produced a really convincing thesis. Your passion and dedication were apparent throughout our many discussions and meetings, as was your commitment to helping your classmates through their own thesis writing process. You were a pleasure to supervise, and you should be proud of the thesis you produced, just as I'm proud to say I supervised it. For his thesis, Nyorshani, who most of us know as Jani, examined whether there was a connection between the rise in violent insurgent groups and the extraction of natural resources in Cabo Delgado, Mozambique. Linkages of that sort are usually cited in discussions about the so-called resource curse, but Jani really got into the different constituent parts of that broad claim and found that while certain aspects of the curse claim are convincing, other parts are less so. That appreciation for nuance is one of the things that made this a really impressive piece of work. And that impression is added to even more when one accounts for the difficulties that any researcher would have in accessing useful data about these groups in Cabo Delgado and what motivates their actions. You showed a really dogged determination, drawing upon academic literature, media reports, NGO studies, and having discussions with people who could offer valuable insights. And the fruit of your labours are there to see in a thesis you can be really proud of. You were a delight to supervise, Jani. I really enjoyed our conversations, both during and after your thesis writing process. Well done. Thank you very much. Oh, you're most welcome. Elena, there's so much to admire about your development of your research idea and the writing of your thesis. You tackled an issue, how to measure and understand the efficiency of microfinance institutions in Africa, that required the creation of an original conceptual framework, and you also had to work with fairly scarce data. These are both daunting challenges for any researcher, but you threw yourself at them with enthusiasm and earnestness, which really impressed me throughout. At times, you had some doubts about the viability of your ideas, but those sorts of concerns are just as much a part of doing a thesis as writing a title page or a bibliography. And because of your determination, resilience, and creativity, you worked through all of those potential obstacles to produce a thesis that you can be really happy to put your name to. I'm delighted to see you here with the rest of your thesis group, getting recognition for all of your hard work, which is most deserved. Well done. Paika, you embody why I was so lucky with this group of thesis students that I supervised this year. Each of our group sessions were so enjoyable because of the spirit of discussion, and you were always in the thick of it, giving serious and thoughtful consideration to your classmates' ideas and advancing many of your own. And through those discussions, you arrived at the topic of river sharing problems and how they're affected by the stability of the regimes that oversee those rivers. You're one of those students that gives me an ultimately good kind of anxiety, because although you might not hear from you for a while, when you do turn up, you'll have 10 new ideas and have written several thousand words. And very often you put together those words to engrossing, illuminating, and convincing effect, resulting in a really fine thesis of which you can be very proud. It's all the more impressive that you did this while balancing college work with a job at the Heineken Brewery. So now that the thesis is finished, you're going to have to bring me on a tour.
All right, and there is this turning of the tassel. This concludes the first part of this festive meeting, and we now move into a break, and there will be some drinks being served to all of us. Yeah, those are marvelous pictures. So we resume the official, the second part of the program of this festive activity. There can be no graduation day without a valedictory speech. The procedure for selection has been like this. Certain people have announced that they would be interested in giving such a farewell speech on behalf of the whole cohort. And then there was a voting system, and the person who was voted with, I think, 66% or 67% of the brought out was Zani Mazive. And my excuses for probably pronouncing your name wrongly.
It's okay. It happens a lot. So yeah, it's Nyo Shani, but most of you know me as Shani. And yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for voting for me. I appreciate it. And given that you've voted for me, I guess you know what you're in for. So yeah, let's just start. Yeah, here we are. Look at us. Graduated, PPE in the bag. It's time to update the LinkedIn profiles and the CVs, huh? Politics, philosophy, and economics, bachelor's at the VU. Done. Congratulations. I want to congratulate all of us. I want to congratulate, celebrate, and revive some memories. I want to congratulate for all the times we have achieved academic excellence and hope you're proud of that. But I also want to congratulate for every time we've managed to balance the fine line of a fun social life and a demanding curriculum. I want to remember and celebrate and congratulate all the times we might have felt a bit stressed and overwhelmed. I want to congratulate all those who faced resets, right? And those who might have feared that they might not experience this moment today where we try on these fancy hats that have withstood the test of time. I want to congratulate all of us, and I hope you're proud of yourselves. So, today we're all seated together. And for us to sit here together and achieve this bachelor's, we received some help. So I want to thank all our support systems, friends, families, colleagues, mentors, roommates, who celebrate this day with us today, either in person or in their hearts, and who were there when we were sometimes a bit vulnerable. Thank you. I want to thank the college staff that took care of all the processes happening in the background. So we students only had to meet obligations, which is study and pass exams. Yeah, thank you, Levin, thank you, Roland, thank you, Phil, thank you, all the heads of departments, and yeah, thank you, all those who responded to all of our emails, of which we sent many. Yeah. Now, university is the place where we dive into the academic world, right? We start to become semi-academics, we become academics. And therefore, I want to thank all the lecturers that shared a piece of their intellectual cake with us and yeah, let us grow in our knowledge. And last but not least, I want to thank the judo lecturers. It was your teaching styles that, yeah, shaped our PPE experience very much, ranging from Akshat's theatrical appearances, making us question our deepest held assumptions in morality and ethics, to Marina's scrambled eggs that would make any logical proposition or equation more digestible. Up to Brian's never-ending patience. Thank you, Brian. Actually, we called our WhatsApp group PPE's Class of Brian. And yeah, today we're all seated here together. PPE's Class of Brian. Brian actually taught one of the subjects many of us feared, statistics. I feared statistics a lot, actually. But that WhatsApp group of ours has a profile picture. And on that profile picture, you see all of us seated together, similar as today, but in the lecture hall. And it was when we were writing our PIP5 exam. We were, for the last time, going to face the same exact challenges, the same exact questions in form of an exam. After that, we would all depart in our individual ways. And I remember that day very clearly because all of a sudden my eyes started tearing and I had an overload of emotions. And believe me, I've been nervous before exams, but this was something else. I realized that all of a sudden, a sense of gratitude and honor overcame me because we were all together in person and I looked around as I do today, seeing so many interesting, inspiring, ambitious, and intelligent people of which I was honored to be part of. And all these individuals would soon embark on their individual trials and endeavors, may it be travels, may it be recovering or reviving 2 years of youth that we lost during the pandemic, may it be master's students, master's degrees, some at universities that I only heard in movies when I was growing up. Yeah. So, yeah, today we sit together, we are graduates. That day, we sat together and we were students. But the first time we sat together, we were being introduced into the world of the John Stuart Mill College. We were being introduced into PPE. Now, there's two things I remember of that day. First being, PPE was going to be a lot of more work than I had anticipated. A lot more, but we made it. And the second were the words of our dean, "May you live in interesting times." Now, in hindsight, it seems like world politicians, activists, and the first ever coronavirus of this pandemic listened to that speech. They all contributed. We did live in interesting times. During our studies, democracies backslid, and the youth raised their voice for Fridays for Future. The sentence, "I can breathe," opened many eyes to existing problems in racism and discrimination. We did live in interesting times. In March 2020, I was studying for a statistics exam. Up in the 4th floor, I was very nervous and scared. And all of a sudden, through the speakers, the voice said, the university would be closed for an indefinite amount of time. And I was happy. So everybody in that study area packed their bags. We thought we had just won the lottery, extra study days for statistics, like this we're going to ace the exam. Little did we know that we were soon going to enter the world of PCR tests, Zoom lectures, and online proctor exams. At this point, I want to thank all the judos and the lecturers who had the patience every time we had our cameras switched off. Thank you. And yeah, the interesting times would continue for quite a while. We would come back to in-person classes. And even though the interesting times continue even now, our bachelor's has come to an end. In this time, we have studied, we learned, and we grew. We studied statistics, Mills-Harm principle, different political systems, and we calculated numerous equilibria. We combined the three perspectives. We could now ask, what is politically feasible, what makes economic sense, and what are our philosophical assumptions beneath it? Now, how has that shaped us, these 3 years of intense study? Do you remember PPE slogan when we started? Yeah, educating the leaders of tomorrow. And I'll be honest, the first time I heard this slogan, I thought, yeah, I'm very pretentious. That was 3 years ago. Now, 3 years later, we have completed this program that promised us to turn into the leaders of tomorrow. And I must say, my perspective has changed. Now that I look at you as you graduate here, yes, indeed, I do see the leaders of tomorrow. Now, hold up. Not too fast. My understanding of leaders has changed. 3 years ago, when I heard the word leaders, I was seeing suited individuals running the arenas of politics, business, and holding high positions of power. Now, I still see that for many of us, don't worry. but now I actually see more. I see leaders of community, people who want to engage on the local level and care. I see leaders of conversation, those who push the ideas forward. And I'm talking about conversations maybe held on panels, but also in the streets, in bars, maybe even on first dates. I see leaders in the office. I see leaders in the office. I see leaders of family. I see leaders. Now, if you don't identify with what I just mentioned, don't worry. You're the leader of your own life. But I do believe PPE has given us the tools so we know where to look, what questions to ask, and what variables we have to take into account. Of course, this is not the end of the journey. We're only starting. We still have a lot to learn and to grow, but I do believe it's a good starting point. Therefore, colleagues, I do not wish you to live in interesting times. I wish you, or I ask us to lead in interesting times. Now, all this leadership talk sounds great, sounds nice, but you only have to turn on the news to see that many people who hold leadership positions today are actually doing a horrible job. Yeah. And as Akshat once said in the break of a seminar class, studying ethics does not automatically make you an ethical person. Therefore, colleagues, I do not only ask us to lead in interesting times, I ask us to lead responsibly. Leading according to our capabilities, leading according to our situation. And you can define that for yourself. Now, you may ask me, what does responsible leadership exactly look like? I think after the 3 years of studying, I'm convinced we have obtained the academic and the analytical tools. But we have to combine that with an honest look into the mirror, a reflection about the ethical implications of our actions, and then I believe we'll figure it out. So, may we lead in interesting times, responsibly, according to our capabilities, according to our situation. Let us take the wheel into our hands, even if the wheel is random. Thank you. I am unbelievably thankful and grateful of having been part of this year, and I'm seriously looking forward to the moments where I turn on the news and I'll brag to the person sitting next to me, oh, I studied with them. Take care, guys.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful speech. Now we continue with the handing over of the diplomas and with hearing the laudatios. And the first, or the next batch will be the students of René ten Brink, I believe. Van den Brink, yeah.
Disip, congratulations with your PPE bachelor degree. You wrote an excellent bachelor thesis on the philosophical foundations of axioms for allocation rules in fair division or claims problems, in particular focusing on different expressions of proportionality. The results and discussions in your thesis are very interesting food for thought. Providing philosophical foundations for axioms of proportionality, you came with an original way to look at solutions for claims problems, and eventually you showed that the Talmud rule stands out in that respect. Combining economic literature on claims problems with philosophy literature on proportionality, and also combining a formal mathematical analysis with a very strong discussion resulted in a thesis with a very strong multidisciplinary PPE character. So from the beginning in the tutorial session, it was already roughly clear what would be your topic, that you wanted to combine economic claims problems with proportionality. But you had many ideas, and at some moment the challenge became to drop some of your ideas and to focus on something that would be feasible within the limits of time and the words that you have for the PPE thesis. You did an excellent job, and you wrote a deep and enjoyable to read thesis. Congratulations. Dear Teresa, also congratulations with your PPE bachelor degree and with also an excellent bachelor thesis. Your thesis was on an enforcement mechanism for the Paris Agreement on climate change. You extended the known model with an enforcement mechanism and specifically addressed the question how such an enforcement mechanism for the Paris Agreement could look like and whether it would induce the members to comply with their target emissions. Moreover, you argue that implementing this mechanism requires that the members are willing to finance a new entity that will act as enforcer. Very interestingly, you show that in equilibrium, emission levels are lower in your model as in the basic model reflecting the Paris Agreement. In this way, you obtain interesting theoretical insights that also are relevant for establishing commitment when forming international agreements like the Paris Agreement in practice. So, and finally, you illustrate your model with the data collected on 7 countries. Now, your thesis process was very steady from the beginning. You started with a basic model with a good literature review, and then step by step you extended the model, and each time obtaining more rich conclusions, ending in this very beautiful thesis. Congratulations. Bertin, congratulations with your PPE bachelor degree. You also wrote an excellent thesis. Your thesis was on measuring the power of an ultimate kingmaker in a voting body. You were inspired by the case of Senator Joe Manchin in the US Senate, but you lifted the analysis in your thesis to a general academic level on ultimate kingmakers, and you treated the Joe Manchin case as a main case study in your thesis. You developed a definition of an ultimate kingmaker that allows to measure the power of such an ultimate kingmaker. So you illustrate this by analyzing Joe Manchin's Senate voting record, and this sharpens our ideas on kingmakers and ultimate kingmakers, which can help to understand political voting situations that have this type of agents. Now, you set yourself an ambitious task to get a good definition of an ultimate kingmaker that reflects conceptually the idea that you had in mind, but also gave a concept that was measurable, where the power of an ultimate kingmaker could be measured, so that you can identify and analyze the impact of such an agent in the voting process. Now, you struggled in the beginning of your thesis, but then at the end, the last weeks, you made everything fell together. And suddenly there was a beautiful thesis. The texts were very good, very clear explanations. And as I said, very relevant for political science as well as economics. So congratulations with your excellent thesis.
So, and then please take the Tessel moment. Next, I'd like to invite to come up front the students of Menuj Kajavi Pur.
Great to see you all again. Welcome. So we start with David. Yeah. David is a student who travels in the footsteps of several Nobel Prize winners when combining literatures on loss aversion and other regarding preferences. He programmed his own online experiment, ran his own online experiment, and analyzed his data.
which was really, really a great contribution that in principle fills a gap in the literature and could be, if he wishes to, be published in an academic journal. Really outstanding work. In our tutorial groups, David was always very helpful to his fellow students, thinking along and contributing to the whole thesis process, not only for finding his own topic, but for finding topics on helping others to find topics for themselves as well. So that was really, really appreciated. David, I congratulate you to a great thesis, which highlights your love to important academic detail that others have missed so far in the literature, including many professors. Whatever your plans for the future hold, I'm sure it will be bright. Congratulations. Peter wrote his thesis on a novel experimental economic design that can answer the question, what is the impact of the monetary extrinsic cost of lying online aversion? That might sound very technical, but we had, I can tell you that we had really good conversations about how this can actually be implemented, how this can be designed. And again, it was a really, really fun time and really interesting to come up with this design and to advise you on this design. Peter was digging deep into an important literature on behavioral economics and social psychology. And I can imagine that, now I have to see what you're doing, a master's, yes. I can imagine that the master into this direction will be a great fit for your talent if you choose to go down this road, which you apparently do. His activities in our thesis group were greatly valued by all fellow students, and I wish you all the best for your future. Congratulations. Sterre wrote her thesis on a primary attempt at observing the aversion to being lied to. Another topic that might sound a bit strange, but it's actually a very, very overlooked topic in an emerging literature in behavioral economics. You can already, so Sterre's thesis was graded 8.5, which is a very good grade if you're not familiar with our grading system here. The way that she formulated her thesis title, a primary attempt at observing and so forth, already shows you how humble she is in the work she's doing and what she claims she found out. She was very diligent in identifying her research topic, and then she not only did that, but she also, again, ran her own experiment. But then in a lab setting, we actually, for that, traveled to Germany to an experimental lab to conduct a study there. She programmed it herself. She analyzed the data herself and wrote the thesis herself, which is a really great accomplishment in the short time that you all have for writing the thesis. Over and again, Sterre asked me to challenge her to make her thesis excellent. I challenged you, Sterre, and you did. Congratulations. I'm not done. So, Sterre, you can be proud of your achievement, and I congratulate you sincerely. It was great working with you, and I hope to learn more about the path. We already talked in the break about the path that you're going down now in Leiden and also for your master's studies. With your creativity and positivity, the sky's the limit. Congratulations. So I'm a bit amused by Patrick's picture because the picture is not, well, when you look at him as a natural appearance, you can already see that he's a much more smiley and much more positive person than in his picture. So so Patrick wrote his thesis on lying and unfair treatment, reciprocating unfair behavior. He also programmed his own experiment and ran it online with a new fascinating design that combines different literatures from behavioral economics. It was
and I put this is really funny with your picture. So I put this, so it was Patrick is a really, really cheerful person and really interesting to talk to. So it's just interacting in our thesis group and the way you contributed to our discussions, but also to just many other conversations we had, not only academically, but also about the student life, things that you plan for your future, including having a pilot's license, things you've done in the past. Very interesting, not only to me, but for the whole group, and to create a whole a group identity that we had this year, which was really, really nice to work in. Patrick, it was a pleasure working with you and advising you on your journey to earning your degree. I'm sure your next project, academically or in the business world, will be a success. Congratulations.
Yes, go for it. Next on are the students of Paul Koster.
Good afternoon, my name is Roland Luttens. I am one of the 3 PPE program coordinators, and it is an honor and a privilege to read out the laudatios of 2 of my economist colleagues who could unfortunately not be here today, one of them being Paul Koster. Dear Xavier, Dico, and Dan, as I am recovering, I unfortunately cannot attend the PPE ceremony and celebration. It was a joy to have you in the thesis group where we discussed the book The Bias That Divides Us and the assumptions behind panel data analysis. Your contributions and the conversations were insightful and fruitful. I now will turn to the laudatios, starting with Xavier. Dear Xavier, what is a market? This intriguing question is important to determine the scope of economic analysis. Surprisingly, it's not that easy to find a clear-cut answer to this question. In your thesis, you compared money and cryptocurrencies and analyzed, among other things, whether these fulfill Rosenbaum's criteria for being market trade: voluntarity, regularity, specification, and competition. You showed that Bitcoin scores better on these criteria than regular money, despite the fact that the social and institutional environment for its characterization as money is lacking. For me, this was an interesting and surprising conclusion. Public institutions might play a role by providing socially accepted and publicly managed digital currencies. You did a splendid job, and we learned a great deal from your thesis and the discussions. I'm confident that your ability to apply the PPE way of thinking to novel innovations such as cryptos will be very useful for other people and for your further career. I wish you all the best. Congratulations with this achievement. I think we proceed with Dico. Dear Dico, policymakers and politicians sometimes have to make difficult trade-offs. One difficult trade-off can be the trade-off between CO2 emissions and income inequality. When reductions in income inequality lead to higher emissions, the normative question arises: which of the 2 policy variables should have priority in policy? In your innovative thesis, you combined panel data analysis with a normative assessment and provided detailed and novel insights in this topic. For example, you showed that for many countries in your sample, higher income inequality implies lower emissions, leading to a policy puzzle. Your ability to combine solid empirical data analysis with normative philosophy makes you an excellent candidate to join societal conversations on this topic. You are a curious and broad-minded student with good verbal and analytical PPE skills. I wish you all the best for the next steps you take. Congratulations with your PPE diploma. And we conclude with Dan. Dear Dan, in your explorative thesis, you investigated whether there is a Kuznets curve for wealth, meaning that wealth inequality first increases and then decreases when GDP increases. This idea runs counter societal expectations, as most people think that Piketty is right in claiming that wealth inequality increases in GDP. The key empirical issue that you tackled is the use of control variables. You showed for OECD countries that controlling for country unobserved and observed governmental variables matters a great deal for the impact of GDP on wealth inequality. The important lesson is that simply looking at bivariate correlations between GDP and wealth inequality is not sufficient to claim a relationship between the two variables. These results deserve more investigation in the future. You also investigated, using different philosophical perspectives, whether wealth inequality is morally permissible. Your thesis results might serve as a useful input for the academic and political conversation about wealth inequality. It was a pleasure to be your supervisor, and I'm confident that your analytical and writing skills will benefit more people in the future. You were always well prepared, curious, to the point, and dared to take risks during the trajectory. We learned a great deal from your work. I wish you a joyful further journey and want to congratulate you with this great achievement.
Right, there it is. Now I invite Christian Kreinen's students.
So unfortunately, Christian could not be here, but he sent a letter of recommendations. So quoting Christian, my PPE candidates, Mirte Hanen, Julian Kreidelman, and Philip Lund, had to dive into the book of the social philosopher Alex Honneth on freedom, which in particular elaborates on the significance of the social nature of the phenomenon of the freedom of the individual. All three students were eager both to study the book intensely and to apply it to current issues in our society, yet here the similarities stop and the differences need to be emphasized. So first, Mirte. If I remember correctly, when we started, Mirte in the first instance was interested to apply Honneth to the problem of housing of students, but soon found out that the text did not fit at all to her philosophical intuitions, basically adhering most postmodern relativism or subjectivism, as Honneth expressed very strong convictions about freedom as an objective value. Now, a very philosophical turn took place in Mirte's mind, as instead showing an attitude of escapism, she started to think through Honneth's conception, while at the same time kind of washing her own philosophical brain. As a result, she came up with a rather fundamental and interesting philosophical thesis, a comparison between the social freedom of Honneth and the capabilities approach of Martha Nussbaum and its impact on universal human rights, that also clearly expresses the struggle with her own philosophical convictions. So congratulations. A completely different case is Julian. Who from the start knew exactly what he wanted to do and rightfully expected that Hunnet's work would be the means to achieve the end. For that reason, Julian studied the book and then also other relevant literature of Hunnet with an incredible energy and eager to learn. My task was to make sure that Julian was addressing the relevant issues. However, as I received his thesis on social freedom, justice, and the politics of mutual recognition and assessment of indigenous freedom in Canada, the quality of this thesis clearly exceeded my expectations by far. He offered a truly remarkable in-depth analysis of the issue at stake. So congratulations. So Philip. Philip turned out to be a kind of mix of Myrthe and Julian. In the beginning, he was very quiet, apparently like a sponge absorbing what was discussed, enriching it not with many, but always with very to-the-point remarks or questions. I was wondering whether Philip would produce something convincing with regard to the literature of our seminar, but then, like a tiger who has been patiently waiting for his quarry, he came up with an idea that from then on completely ruled his intellectual activities. He scrutinized the relevance of Hunnet's theory of critical assessment of social media, an issue that Hunnet himself seems to have forgotten. Philip's The Changing Media Landscape, an analysis of the effects of social media on the democratic public sphere and on social freedom, enriches Hunnet's theory of freedom substantially. So congratulations. So, and then Christian concludes, in short, I'm very happy to have been part of our thesis team and to witness the great intellectual growth of Myrthe, Julian, and Philip. They really formed their personality by doing science. Good luck with all your future undertakings.
All right, here is the Tessel moment. And now please the students of Peter Landau.
So I think it's important to start off by just making the point that when you're a supervisor of 4 students, like the 4 students we have here, it's the learning process really is not one way only. I spent a good number of weeks working with these students, and I came away much enriched by the whole process, and it was a really enjoyable and important period, I think. All 4 of these students did a tremendous job of getting really deeply into what's probably in many respects a real fundamental set of questions in economics, which is sort of what drives economic well-being and what we mean by economic well-being. We're often distracted by discussions of growth and economic growth as though that were the main preoccupation of economists, but fundamentally I think growth is only an instrumental means to actually achieving economic welfare, and those are precisely the themes that were interesting to the following 4 students. So it was a real pleasure working with them, and I learned a great deal. And I'll start my laudatio with the case of Emil Bernstein. So Emil was really interested in this question of the reliability of sort of conventional economic analysis of inequality. He was interested in this issue of the dispersion of welfare, and he's interested in the way economists address that question. And he started off in his thesis making the point that, in his view, the sort of analysis of inequality really can't be just viewed as a statistical exercise where Gini coefficient, which is the conventional measure of inequality, is used to capture the degree of dispersion of incomes. And that's just not sufficient. We really need to look behind what the Gini coefficient it is and basically understand what the sort of underpinnings, philosophical underpinnings are of that. So that was an aspect of the thesis that Emile wrote, which was looking at that specific question. He then turned to this Gini coefficient and this analysis of inequality using the Gini coefficient and asked whether income as our measure of well-being, economic well-being, can really be used for the purpose of studying economic inequality. And he basically argued that this issue of inter-household transfers is not really well captured in a measure of income as conventionally calculated. And intra-household transfers in some parts of the world, notably in Africa and in East Asia, are often very important. And he showed on the basis of simulation analysis that he undertook and basically designed himself to show just how sensitive conventional measures of inequality are to alternative assumptions about the importance of intra-household transfers. So all in all, it was a thesis that really advanced our thinking about the issues of comparability, issues of measurement, and fundamental issues of what do we actually mean by income and economic inequality. So it was a truly interesting and stimulating thesis, and I enjoyed very much supervising Emile on this. So congratulations. Next call up, Joël Bos. So Joël had a very interesting question. Joël was interested in this idea of religious conflict on the one hand and poverty on the other hand. And his question was really, can we make a link between, is there a relationship between religious conflict, and so the outbreaks of religious conflict, as we do observe in various parts of the world and throughout history, and their impact on poverty, economic well-being measured in terms of deprivation? Now, conventionally, when economists think about that, they say, well, the obvious route is through religious conflict and then economic growth, and then economic growth falters, and then poverty rises. And that's the kind of route that conventional economists would take or would consider when making that connection. But in fact, Joël argues that there may actually be a direct relationship between religious conflict and poverty, and that there could be a direct impact of these outbreaks of conflict on poverty immediately. He actually makes the interesting point that the relationship isn't always in the direction you might expect. It's not always from religious conflicts to more poverty. Sometimes, in some circumstances, it could actually be a go the other way. And these circumstances are what Joël really focuses on, and the need to really understand the local context within which these questions are being investigated. And he undertook 2 case studies, one in the case of the Moluccas and the other case in Mindanao in the Philippines, to look at outbreaks of religious conflict and their impact on poverty. And he shows that indeed it isn't always an obvious relationship, and it really does matter to look very closely at the local context and the local circumstances. So again, a really interesting thesis of which I learned a great deal. So thanks very much, and congratulations. Next is Riccardo Rapparini. So Riccardo was another fascinating thesis. Riccardo's came into our meetings, our discussions, and he had a very clear understanding, a very clear idea of what it was that he was interested in, and that's artificial intelligence. And so he's interested in this question of what is the impact and how does artificial intelligence and the whole explosion of these artificial intelligence technologies and practices, what does that imply for inequality? And that's a difficult question to answer because we don't have a great deal of evidence on that. So he approached this question, I guess, in a sort of a conceptual basis. But he acknowledged that, in fact, there are possibly 2 very different ways of thinking about it. One way of thinking about it is the sort of conventional economist way of thinking about it, which is that we should think about the consequences of artificial intelligence for inequality and intervene on that basis. This involves looking at sort of possible market failures and issues of information asymmetries and so on, and then trying to sort of respond to the spread of artificial intelligence practices and try to correct for those possible consequences in terms of inequality. But the other way of thinking about it, and the way that Ricardo convincingly argues we should think about it, is to take the view of Mariana Mazzucata, another famous economist working on these issues, and actually anticipate the impacts of artificial intelligence on inequality and actually intervene ex ante rather than responding to the impacts of artificial intelligence, actually anticipate where things are going to go and actually respond proactively. So he surveyed a very large literature looking at both sort of approaches and documented that very carefully in his thesis, producing what I think is a really stimulating analysis. And I imagine Ricardo may well continue working on this area because it is a really important topic, deserves a lot more focus. Thanks. Congratulations. Lastly, I'd like to call up Fanny Remy. So in her thesis, Fanny was interested in the fair trade movement. This is obviously a movement that we've all seen and been exposed to when we do our daily shopping. So it's something we're quite familiar with. But what Fanny is interested in is knowing what is the impact of this fair trade movement on economic welfare. And what she did in her thesis was, first of all, gave a clear description of exactly what the fair trade movement actually involves. And that's actually rather complicated. It's not just a question of getting a label and being able to sell your products with a fair trade label, but there's a whole package of interventions that come along with the fair trade label, and that was carefully documented in her thesis. She then looked at what the impact of the fair trade process is on what is termed by the fair trade movement as living income. Now, living income is much more than just actual conventionally measured income. It takes into account a much broader set of issues that are important, or attributes that are important for broader welfare, well-being, standard of living. And she then looked at what can we learn about the fair trade movement, focusing specifically on the cut flower industry in Kenya. And she undertook some actual data work of her own by going to Kenya and spending some time talking to people in Kenya about the cut flower industry, and then surveying what actually turns out to be a huge literature, but largely sort of semi-academic literature around the fair trade movement. And it turns out that there's a lot of possible impacts and consequences of the fair trade movement on this living income concept, well beyond just the provision of incomes or earnings, but actually also through impacts on health, impacts on education, impacts on investment choices, and so on. And all these mechanisms have been touched on in the literature and so on, but there's not a real clear systematic assessment of all these particular impacts on living income. So she really points out in her thesis the importance of doing careful evaluative type of work. And this is a kind of clear message that comes out of her work. And I do hope that it does promote and prompt further research by students, but also by researchers around the world on this particular question. So congratulations, Fanny. Fanny, a fascinating thesis.
Thank you so much. Right. Now I'd like to ask to come up the students who worked with Roland Luttens.
I think we start with Wieke. Dear Wieke, many congratulations with your graduation today. You can be proud and your family can be proud. You were a very visible student to me. You did not only take all my courses, but each time we organized something extra, like a reading group, you could be sure that Wieke was going to participate. And I don't know whether you've seen it during the break, but there was this slide of the reading group we had on the Humanomics book by Vernon Smith. And there were 3 people on Zoom, right? There was me, there was Marina, and there was Wieke. So, quod erat demonstrandum. So I was not surprised that you wanted to write your thesis with me. The only problem was, what topic are we going to write about? And in the beginning, that wasn't easy. And it actually caused a little bit of stress and anxiety. And then all of a sudden, there was this casual conversation over at the coffee machine, and Wieke said to me, in my free time, I cannot, have that meeting with you because tonight I'm playing football. And that was the eureka moment, because we had found our thesis topic. Wieke was going to look into the intriguing question why in professional football there are no female coaches. And Wieke approached the topic in a typical PPE style, combining economic concepts of correlation mechanisms and salience with more philosophical topics like variable belief spaces. And what came out of that, I think, was an excellent, very PPE-ish thesis, of which, again, you can be proud of. I saw you recently in the cafeteria, which means that you are still at the VU, studying the Master in Economics. I obviously wish you all the best in that program, and not only in that program, but also beyond. Congratulations. And speaking about enthusiastic students, dear Sanne, from the very first lectures you took with me, I recognized a very strong, very intelligent, but also very dedicated and very motivated student. And that was not only when you were studying PPE, you also put a lot of effort in making our program better. So you continuously gave me feedback on how things were going in the econ track. And also when we were hiring a student representative to hire new UDOs, you were, of course, available, and the work you've done for us for that is greatly appreciated, and I want to thank you for that today. So then to the thesis. I think the thing with Sanne is that she is a perfectionist. In the first place, she's a perfectionist for herself. And so when she came up to me with the idea of investigating electoral competition, but from an agent-based perspective, I can say that that was a very ambitious project. So I have heard today many of my colleagues saying that this was the best thesis they have supervised, and that of course shows the quality of our students in this program. And I'm going to say something very similar. I think over the years that this was the most ambitious project that I have supervised, which you have undertaken. And you have done that in a very successful way. And it, of course, required a lot of effort. You first had to learn the NetLogo programming language. You then dived into the frontier where the profession stands in political science, me being an economist. And then you genuinely kind of extended and you produced what I think is a novel insight about which I envision, and you know that, I envision you reaching out to these top professors in the field, showing your results, because I truly believe that you have the skills to make it in academia. I wish you, just like Wieke, I wish you all the best in your master, which you're doing at that other university in Amsterdam. But when that is finished, I'm looking forward about what your future plans will be. So keep me informed, and congratulations.
The students of Marije Martijn.
So, sorry, Marije couldn't be here. So it's me stepping in. So for Jacob Grein. So, dear Jacob, your thesis, The Life World and Rhetoric, a Platonic and Habermasian perspective on ideal rhetoric in contemporary pluralistic democracies, is an impressive piece of work. You started from Plato's view of rhetoric, juxtaposed it with Habermas's theory of communicative action, and improved both in an inspiring manner to fit the context of pluralistic democracies. I loved working with you because of your capacity of formulating long sentences on the spot, like Noah, who graduated last year. Your quick mind and your kindness. You read a lot, see connections everywhere, and have a great hunger for learning. You're aware of what language does and can do, and use it very consciously. And at last but not least, you're capable of condensing and explaining very complex theories in a precise and clear manner that makes you, besides an excellent researcher, a promising teacher. I'd like to add a sentence of my own because you did the honors project with me. I can really say that even on a completely different topic, I have the same congratulations to make. Congratulations. I hope you will keep me posted about where you go from here. Friso? Dear Friso, your thesis, A Conversation with History, the Gorgias Rhetoric and Hermeneutics, is a beautiful discussion of the role of rhetoric in international relations. Like Jacob, you started from Plato's analysis of rhetoric, but you added a hermeneutical angle as well as theoretical reflections from the English school in international relations. You illustrated your theoretical framework through a fascinating analysis of Zelensky's use of the past in the Bundestag speech. I loved working with you because of your friendly nature and your intellectual honesty that makes you very aware of the many broader questions underlying specific research questions. You are not a sprinter, more of a diesel. Your presence in the group was like the thesis process as a whole. You were not often the first to speak up, but your comments were always to the point, creative and helpful. Likewise, your thesis took a while to get into the gear, but the result is really interesting and creative. Trust your research instinct, it is strong. Congratulations. I hope you will keep me posted about where you go from here. So that was
Yeah, you can't escape the chaos. Next, the students of Remco Oosterkamp.
Harriet. So on behalf of Remco Oostendorp, Harriet's thesis on the change in Eastern European gender norms following the fall of communism relative to the gender norms in Western Europe shows a convergence in norms which is Europe-wide. This analysis clearly shows Harriet's ability and desire to identify the big picture in otherwise complex phenomena. The thesis work required learning new empirical techniques to be able to observe the long-run tendencies in Eastern and Western European gender attitudes. But these challenges were admirably overcome. Harriet's interpretation of the results was extremely careful, always doing justice to alternative interpretations, showing her sensitive and well-balanced attitude. Her contributions to the thesis group seminars were highly appreciated, with insightful presentations and argumentative discussions. Of course, never without a good dose of British understatement. Harriet, congratulations with this PPE milestone and good luck in the next steps of your career.
All right, a solo performance. May I now invite the students that worked with Alison Smith.
I supervise two groups, politics and economics and comparative politics. Actually, it's interesting that the two different topics attracted two different very types of people, but they all worked very, very hard and produced excellent theses. I'm going to start with Enzo Bocchino. Enzo's thesis on the hydra of democracy, how populism re-emerges through its own device, was a highly topical examination of how populism in Latin America remains stuck in feedback loops of inclusionary and exclusionary populism. And now I've actually read Enzo's thesis, I now see this feedback loop everywhere, including in my own native Britain. So that's actually something very fascinating when a student can come up with something so original that it makes you look at all kinds of other politics differently. Although ostensibly combining politics and economics, this thesis was also highly philosophical. Enzo has actually presented his thesis to the bureaucracy of the Brazilian parliament, so I was extremely proud to hear that, and apparently it was very well received. One thing I've learned from Enzo is that unpicking the cycles of populism in Latin America, he was able very well to combine his technical knowledge of politics and economics with a genuine passion for his country and a genuine will to improve his country. And it was great to see that, and I'm really excited to see what Enzo does next. Enzo. Next up is Luke Doubled. Luke's thesis on the economic divergence in the Baltic states, why Latvia is lagging behind, tackled a gap in the literature on the economic performance of the Baltic states that's actually been puzzling a lot of us who spend a lot of time in that region. In general, the tiny Baltic states are success stories of the post-communist transition, but since the global financial crisis, Estonia and Lithuania have been roaring ahead while Latvia has been falling behind. Luke confirmed that Latvia has paid a long-term price for the crash in its banking sector that happened during the global financial crisis, but he also identified Latvia's lack of a tax credit system for research and development as an oversight that must be tackled. I think that with Luke's talent for macroeconomics, he was able to provide original insights into almost political questions, or actually political choices that governments and bureaucracies might make. And the Latvian government would be very lucky to have him as an advisor. Next, from the comparative politics course, we have Thomas du Colombier. Thomas's thesis on what drives populism in France also tackled a subject that is evolving before our eyes. He examined and assessed the contribution of economic anxiety, sociological change, cultural backlash, and institutional design to the rise of populism in France. He made an interesting and original recommendation that France should consider adopting an Australian-style alternative vote system to aggregate the increasingly diverse views of French society. This, in his view, he argued, could help reduce polarization, which is currently being exacerbated, in his view, by the presidential electoral system. Thomas's very deep knowledge of politics in his native France was very interesting to hear. He was always happy to share with the rest of the class, and the elections were ongoing at the time, so we would always be asking Thomas, okay, what's the latest? Who's going to win? And he was always happy to advise us. Congratulations, Thomas, and I look forward to seeing what you do. Next, we have Ties Hagemeyer. Few theses have been more prescient than Ties's analysis of the impact of populism on the business environment in Britain, which examined whether Brexit was a populist tragedy or victory. I've thought about Ties's work often over the last few weeks as Liz Truss's populist rejection of experts, institutions, and abacus economics unraveled before our eyes. Given that Ties was already working full-time in venture capital while writing this thesis, he did struggle to find the time to write this thesis, but we can all be glad that he did because his insights were genuinely thought-provoking. Because Ties was already working in the financial sector, he brought his experience, his first-hand experience from that industry, and he looked at the literature, the academic literature, on the economic consequences of populism with fresh eyes. Finally, we have Nicholas Roppink. Nicholas's thesis, I Made All Things to All Men, a regulatory proposal for political microtargeting in the Netherlands, brought philosophical insights to the pressing political question of microtargeting in elections. He examined the philosophical basis for the regulation of microtargeting and came up with a set of recommendations that could be followed in the Netherlands and beyond. Nicholas's main conclusion is that the existing voluntary codes in the Netherlands are insufficient, and if not more stringently regulated, microtargeting can be a real threat to democracy. I always thought about microtargeting from the perspective of, we already regulate other forms of campaigning in this way, so why wouldn't we regulate microtargeting in a similar way? But Nicholas went back to the philosophical first principles of why we regulate elections at all, and it was fascinating to see him do that. Good luck in the future, Nicholas.
Thank you so much. And now we move to the students of William Steffens.
So regrettably, Liam wasn't able to come at the last minute, so I'll be reading his laudatios today. Don't know who's first. Tessa. Tessa's interest in the role of gender in addressing extremism arose early in the thesis trajectory, and she was quickly able to carve out a clear niche within this topic. She worked quietly, but with incredible efficiency, and surprised me by presenting me at an early point with a complete thesis. What most impressed me, however, was her desire to dive deeper. While the draft thesis at this point would certainly have passed, she told me that she was not satisfied, that she had to go further. She immediately picked up on my suggestions and took a deeper, more systematic dive into the policies she was analyzing. This led to a much stronger and indeed more interesting thesis. The reason this impressed me so much is she seemed less concerned about whether this would give her a higher grade and more concerned about how accurately and competently she had undertaken her analysis. This is truly the mark of a scientist. All I can say is, well done, Tessa. Walter. Walter is a thoughtful student and approached the thesis trajectory with an impressively calm yet focused approach. Without rushing the process, he took time to dive into and unpack the reading and was able to, through this, to identify a clear and important question about the deployment of the label extremism. There's remarkably scarce philosophical work on extremism, and Walter was able to build on a philosophical analysis. However, with the mark of a true PPE student, he did not shy away from the complex political implications of such an analysis. Conversations with Walter about his topic were always engaging, and he was able to take on advice and make it his own. There were various routes Walter could have taken with his thesis, but he explicitly decided not to take the easiest. He demonstrated a genuine thirst for understanding the issues at hand. He graduates with a well-deserved cum laude. Well done, Walter. I hope you continue pursuing these questions around extremism. Georgi entered the thesis trajectory with a clear intellectual curiosity combined with an evident concern to contribute to making the world a better place, in particular addressing challenges he saw in his home country. This meant that from the outset, Georgi engaged fully in the discussions, seeking immediately to understand the relevance of the concepts and ideas we were exploring for the issues he could see playing out in Bulgaria. He then set out developing his research project and was tenacious in pursuing what he felt was important. What struck me, though, was how willing he was to take on critical feedback and use this to refine his work. The issues he is concerned to address are large and could occupy a full PhD, so he had to work hard to focus and restrain himself. He went on to write a highly engaging thesis on the weaponization of COVID-19 conspiracy theories, a truly important issue. I cannot end without mentioning his kindness and thoughtfulness, such powerful qualities in a world beset by polarization. Congratulations.
The final students are those of Jan Willem Wieland.
The last group. Okay, good to see you again. Dia, you first. Okay, Dia, you worked on surnames, and particularly its patriarchal nature. According to you, it is an injustice that we often simply get the surnames of our fathers. In your thesis, you present a thought experiment. Imagine a world where it is a widely accepted custom that when a person of color marries a white person, it is the white person's surname that gets passed down in the case they have children. Just as this is obviously unjust, our current practice is unjust. And the second claim of your thesis is that we all have an individual duty or responsibility to do something about this problem. Yeah, when we get married or get children, we shouldn't pass down the father's name or the mother's name, for that matter, which is also her father's. And moreover, work towards a society, that we should all work towards a society where we can choose our own surnames. What I really liked about your thesis is that you speak with your own voice and tell an important story that most people just never think about. Is your father here? He's there. Hello. I remember that Dia told me he liked debating with you, is that right? Do I remember? Yeah. So even though he disagreed with you, you can be super proud of Dia. Okay, congratulations. Next, Emily. Emily, should nature get legal rights? For instance, should the Waddenzee, or maybe parts of the Netherlands that suffer from the stikstof crisis, get legal rights? Such rights would be a powerful weapon for environmental protection. But philosophers ask, what could justify such rights? Yeah, why should parts of nature get legal rights? Now, one answer is that the Waddenzee is valuable in itself, yeah? Just like human beings, just like us. And the same would then go for plants, trees, rivers, and so on.
But in the West, we often don't think like that. Yeah? So you worked on an alternative justification, namely one where the Waddenzee or other things in nature are not valuable in itself, but for us. Yeah, we need rights of nature because they're needed for human rights. Yeah, this is a very recent idea, and I was happy to see that you had the courage to take it up. It was a pleasure to work with you. You brought a lot of energy to the group meetings and shared every step of the thesis process with me. And also only stopped revising and revising drafts until you were satisfied. Your writing style is a talent of yours. I really hope you will put this to use to promote such important topics in the future. Congratulations, Emily. Last one, now it's... Last one. So suppose you win the lottery. According to Naut, you should not accept the prize. If you take the prize, you would benefit from wrongdoing, and you shouldn't. Yeah, taking the prize, and this is only one of your examples somewhere, is like keeping a stolen painting that was simply given. Yeah, it was not stolen by you, it was just given to you by a stranger who stole it. So your thesis, just as some others I heard, is a nice example of a PPE thesis that combines two disciplines, namely work in economics on the addictiveness of gambling and work in ethics. So supervising you was easy. I only had to point you into the direction of the benefiting from wrongdoing debate, and you dove right in. It's a super complex debate, but the way you present it in your thesis and at points of your own and examples of your own is impressive. Yeah, the level of argumentation is extremely high. It's more something a master's student or a PhD student would produce. Having a group with Dia, Emily Boyd, who is not here today, he's abroad, and you was an honor. In our last meeting, now at a few final questions, and I remember well that you wanted to know if he should call his discussion section frequently asked questions. Like he needed a service desk for all those people that had questions about his thesis. And Emily couldn't hold it. Okay, congratulations now.
So not all students who actually followed up and completed the program were able to be here. They will be spoken to and the laudations will be showed on the screen. So. Am I saying something wrong? That's the first thing. I'm so sorry, Phil. So there's a thesis prize, and Phil is going to explain who won it and what the procedure was.
Exactly, yeah. And the video, I think the video is coming next. Oh yeah, so as you see, it's time for the John Stuart Mill Thesis Prize. So we've been hearing a lot about the different theses, and I mean, what I want to actually start with is just to give a very brief summary of our thesis trajectory. So different from a lot of other studies, we have a kind of unique thesis program. This was the creation of Roland Luttens, one of our coordinators from the economics side. And it involves all of these meetings, all of this work, our thesis supervisors really really have high expectations of you. And I think it's really, we should congratulate all of you for completing that. Now, as thesis coordinator, one of my roles, every year I sort of ask all the thesis coordinators, nominate some prize-worthy theses. And I think in the beginning it was like, nominate, some really strong theses, and then there were so many, And then I was like, okay, nominate, the next year I said, nominate really like incredible theses, and then there were just too many. So this year I think I said something like, these have to be amazing theses to be nominated. And so the list of names you see here were those who were determined by your thesis supervisors to be really just amazing work. So you should all be really congratulated. But we have a prize. So there are actually 3 winners of the John Stuart Mill Thesis Prize every year. The winners are determined by a jury, which is made up of the heads of study, so one person from each discipline within PPE. And so, no one knows who's going to win except for like 5 people or something. And PricewaterhouseCoopers, I don't know, audited everything. Okay, the winners first. Oh, all 3 of them. Okay. So these are the winners. So why don't you come up? Maybe just come up one by one. So first, Camilla. So we asked the jury for a quote for each of the theses, and the quote is this: "The argumentation is very strong, makes great use of the data available, and puts together a coherent and convincing narrative despite the complex subject matter." For each winner, the prize is, well, it's sort of like a trinket. It's supposed to be a love trinket with these interlocking kind of circles. But what it really embodies, in my view, and I hope for all of you, is the 3 disciplines. In all cases, you really interwove all 3 disciplines together, and that's displaying a love for the 3 disciplines and their power, and €100. So, congratulations. Of course, yeah. Next, Sana. Congratulations, Sana. This thesis is nicely located at the intersection of economics and political science. Sana learned the methodology of agent-based modeling during the thesis trajectory. She contributed by locating her research on the frontier of the field. Excellent. And finally, Svenja. Svenja's thesis focuses onto a real-world problem. What gives the EU the right to make policy, and should we worry that it lacks this right because it's insufficiently democratic? Svenja's thesis provides a bold but careful and well-reasoned response. We should assess the legitimacy of EU institutions by standards of its epistemic virtues rather than the extent to which it's democratic. Congratulations, Svenja.
The video I announced is now.
Dear class of 2022.
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 Dear Meerte, Julian and Phil.
Many congratulations on your graduation today.
Congrats on everything, everyone.
Congratulations on this significant achievement.
Congratulations on your diploma.
A quote from my kid's favorite book, The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It is not.
You had it really rough and tough, everyone, but you managed to pull through.
I'm really glad that you are not only fans of freedom, but as it has turned out, in our class, you are also really thinkers of freedom. For that, I wish you good luck and all the best.
John Stuart Mill would be proud of you. And these three as well.
I'm not fishing for compliments when I say that you deserve this title. It's your chance now to fish in more troubled waters.
I know you have worked very hard for it. Now onto a new challenge.
I hope you always have each other. The way you always have your fried broccoli with scrambled chocolate, eggs.
I hope none of you become an asshole. But if you do, just don't tell anyone that I taught you ethics.
We will be there whenever you need. Fourth floor, forever.
I wish you best of luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
So there is a time for starting and a time for ending, and we have almost reached the time for ending this session. When I was looking at this, there's one diploma left. I thought I'm going to say to you this. You're going to help each other out. This seems a tightly connected group. Sometimes you run out of energy, sometimes you run out of help. Here's a picture. Speaks about help. Auxilium nostrum in nominum Dei. I don't know if that means anything to you. To me, it means a lot. Think about it and talk about it. There will be a picture moment with the grad students over here, or graduated students here, and then thereafter, and the others who have not graduated, they will be leaving the room quietly and decently and in good order, and there will be drinks. And then thereafter, there will be further moments with the photographer, but that's out of my hands and out of my sight. So, again, many congratulations for all of you, parents, friends, dear ones, dearlings, loved ones. Congratulations with all these beautiful people. These were my last words. So the students go over there and make pictures, right? Yeah.